If you've clicked on this, you're already wondering, why would New York City, the Big Apple, city of dreams, destroy one of its most prized architectural gems? Adorned with intricate stone carvings and lavished with bronze details, the Charles M. Schwab Mansion was once a crown jewel that stood grandly on the growing Manhattan skyline. Resplendent in its Beaux Arts style, the mansion, completed in 1906, was the epitome of Gilded Age opulence. Each one of its 75 rooms showcased the finest examples of artisan craftsmanship. Frescoed ceilings that told tales of centuries long gone, hand-laid mosaic floors reflecting the glittering chandeliers above, and walls of mahogany and imported silk that whispered stories of the privileged few who had crossed their thresholds. Gardens designed by the famed landscape architect, Charles Welford Levitt, surrounded this massive abode, creating a sanctuary of tranquility amidst the constant bustle of the city. The Charles M. Schwab Mansion was an awe-inspiring residential monument to an era when the city's elite, like its steel magnate owner, wielded their wealth with an ostentatious display of power. Of course, with all of this once standing in beautiful granite reality, one can't help but wonder, how did such a remarkable monument to excess meet its fateful end in a cloud of dust and rubble replaced by cheap apartments? In today's video at Old Money Mansions, we'll tell you the true, rags to riches to rags story of its builders, what possessed them to build such a palatial abode in what would become the center of America's largest city, and how it sadly met its final demise as we describe why New York's most opulent mansion was demolished for cheap apartments. Charles M. Schwab. It's a name that's more than just a name. It's a symbol, a snapshot of a time when the clang of metal and the glow of molten steel were the beating heart of America. Born in 1862 to a blanket manufacturer in the quaint borough of Williamsburg, Pennsylvania, little did anyone suspect that this modest lad would one day become a titan of the steel industry. Life began simply for Schwab, his hands learning the gritty texture of honest labor at Edgar Thomson Steel Works, an enterprise owned by the formidable Andrew Carnegie. But it was soon clear that Schwab was not one to be confined within the maze of machines and molten metal. His people skills and harmonious leadership style caused him to climb the ranks, reaching the zenith as the president of Carnegie Steel. Yet this was only the beginning. Schwab would become the first president of the United States Steel Corporation, masterminded by the legendary J.P. Morgan, before setting up Bethlehem Steel, which would claim its own spot as the second largest steel producer in America. Even though wealth poured in, Schwab remained warm-hearted, known for his down-to-earth charisma and ability to connect with people. Amidst all this, he found love and married Emma Urana Dinky in 1883. The future Urana Schwab grew up in the modest charm of Weatherly, Pennsylvania, a far cry from the opulent life that would eventually unfurl before her as the spouse of one of the wealthiest individuals on the globe. Her life took a dramatic turn in 1883 when she crossed paths with Charles M. Schwab, who was then residing in Braddock, Pennsylvania, during his tenure at the Edgar Thomson Steel Works. As the Schwab fortunes swelled, Urana, with grace and adaptability, transitioned into their increasingly luxurious lifestyle. She was by Charles' side at glittering social events and within the lavish walls of their opulent residences. And Urana wasn't simply a silent partner in their matrimonial bliss. When Charles stood on the precipice of a monumental $50 million offer for half of the Bethlehem Steel Company, he sought Urana's counsel, seeing her as a shared partner in the business claim. This detail not only sheds light on their marital dynamic, but also suggests that Urana Schwab played an active and influential role in their fiscal decisions, sharing in their triumphs and navigating their vast wealth together. It paints a picture of a woman who was more than just a companion. She was a confidant, a partner, and, at times, cog in the Schwab empire. Before the grandeur of the subject of today's video, the 75-room mansion, Riverside, in Manhattan's Upper West Side, Schwab resided in a stately house in Braddock, Pennsylvania. A stunning creation of brick and sandstone built between 1890 and 1893, it showcased Schwab's status as the superintendent of the nearby Edgar Thomson Steel Works. Tennis courts, greenhouses, a carriage house, and a stone porch provided a canvas for leisure, while the interiors were a masterclass in oak paneling, a grand staircase, wide stained glass windows, and ornate fireplaces. Soon, Charles M. Schwab set his sights on a grand vision, a contemporary mansion, a cutting-edge sanctuary standing in defiance of the traditional grandeur of Fifth Avenue. His eyes landed on a coveted plot on Riverside Drive, nestled between 73rd and 74th Streets, the perfect canvas for his modern chateau. Now, Urana initially balked at the idea of uprooting so far from her social circles. A bona fide socialite who enjoyed the glamour of Central Park's balls, she feared isolation from her close-knit community of friends. Charles, however, comforted her with a promise that their forthcoming home would be an irresistible lure for any guest. Subsequently, Schwab, in his daring pursuit of architectural grandeur, appointed Maurice Hebert, an architect yet to secure a significant reputation, with the awe-inspiring task of designing his Beaux-Arts-inspired palace. Over an intense period of 4 years, this awe-striking monument of pink granite began to emerge, a true testament to the ambitious vision that guided it. The Beaux-Arts style, steeped in the robust traditions of ancient Roman and Greek aesthetics, was widely favored in the United States from the late 19th to the early 20th century. It reflected an amalgamation of classical elements and the glamour of modernity, striking an impressive balance between the two. These grand mansions were symmetrical in design, harkening back to the classical emphasis on harmony and balance. The interiors were thoughtfully structured, with a clear demarcation between formal entrances, grand staircases, and the intimate quarters designed for daily living. Classic Greek and Roman architectural elements like columns, pediments, and cornices were employed to infuse a sense of timelessness and sophistication. Elaborate ornamentation was characteristic of Beaux-Arts, with intricate sculptural reliefs, friezes, and moldings adorning the surfaces. Statues and figures were often incorporated into the facades, amplifying the grandeur and opulence of the design. The first floor of these palaces was usually elevated, bestowing upon it an air of prominence and importance. Materials like limestone, marble, or granite were predominantly used, enhancing their imposing and awe-inspiring visage. In particular, the Gilded Age saw the rise of various Beaux-Arts marvels like the Vanderbilt Mansion, the so-called Triple Palace, in New York City, the Henry Morrison Flagler Museum, aka Whitehall, in Palm Beach, and the Breakers Mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. These mansions were designed to be dazzling emblems of wealth, flaunting sumptuous interiors, grand staircases, elaborate woodwork, and extravagant furnishings. Additionally, the Beaux-Arts style was not only limited to private residences, but also extended to public edifices like libraries, museums, and government offices. It was seen as a manifestation of prestige and civic pride, adding to the architectural allure of the urban landscape. Now back to our audacious Schwab mansion. A staggering $3 million each was spent on the house and its furnishings, a total of $6 million, or a jaw-dropping $200 million in today's currency. So magnificent was this 75-room mansion that even Schwab's erstwhile boss, and arguably the second richest man in American history, Andrew Carnegie, conceded, "Have you seen that place of Charlie's? It makes mine look like a shack." Indeed, nothing less than bespoke would suffice for Schwab. Over 100 artisans, designers, and engineers were employed to meticulously craft every detail of the mansion. Noteworthy works of art were recreated in-house, and even Schwab's collection of tapestries took a detour to the 1904 World's Fair before adorning his residence. The mansion boasted marble pillars, South American mahogany paneling, a custom chapel large enough to accommodate an orchestra, a bowling alley, and a glazed brick pool. A home gym of unprecedented scale, and an art gallery filled with $50 million worth of art, a quarter of the mansion's overall budget, added to its splendor. Other remarkable features included a power plant, air conditioning, and 6 elevators, luxuries unheard of in even the most elite homes of the era, confirming Schwab's mansion as a groundbreaking beacon of modernity. However, despite the glory of his domicile, soon Schwab's personal life began to unravel. Notorious for his flamboyant lifestyle, grand parties, high-stakes gambling, and multiple extramarital affairs, his antics, including fathering a child out of wedlock, strained his relationship with Urana. His extravagant expenditures and risky ventures, including a memorable instance of breaking the bank at the Monte Carlo casino in Monaco, led to the depletion of his fortune, once estimated between $25 million and $40 million, equivalent to $500 million and $800 million in today's currency. His mansion, an incarnation of his innovative spirit and love for luxury, also served as a backdrop to his tumultuous personal life. However, it was through these troubles that we can, with hindsight at our sides, see the extravagant Charles M. Schwab mansion was on a calamitous trajectory towards its demise. Urana, Charles's wife, whose social life had been promised to burgeon in the mansion, additionally found herself sinking into an engulfing melancholy. Gradually she shunned the social milieu, seeking solace within the grand walls of her mansion, distancing herself from the city's glitz and glam, even declining prestigious invites, including those from the White House. The burgeoning isolation paralleled her physical transformation. Urana, who was once the radiant belle of society, was becoming overweight, and the stigma associated with her changing appearance pushed her further into her self-imposed exile. Thus, the mansion, once alive with energy and laughter, became a sanctuary of solitude. In 1917, with World War I ravaging the world, Urana breathed life back into the mansion, opening its grandeur to the Red Cross, allowing the vast space to contribute to the war effort. However, the Schwab's endeavor to reclaim a sense of normality was abruptly disrupted by the cataclysm that was the Great Depression. Charles, erstwhile a titan of industry, witnessed his fortune evaporating overnight. Desperate, he listed the mansion on the market for $4 million, roughly $71 million in today's dollars. With no buyers forthcoming and the maintenance of the mansion turning insurmountable, Charles found himself marooned within his own architectural masterpiece. In 1939, Charles, now merely a walking echo of his former glory, packed his possessions and moved to a modest Park Avenue apartment. A year later, he passed away, leaving behind a legacy diminished to mere pennies. The mansion, once the pinnacle of luxury and opulence, stood eerily abandoned. Although there were deliberations about repurposing the mansion for government use, the mayor refuted the idea, deeming the mansion too grandiose for such functionality. Sadly, the dismantling of the Charles M. Schwab mansion began in 1948. Its ornate mahogany doors and exquisitely carved marble pilasters were salvaged and later installed in Brooklyn's Our Lady of Lebanon Cathedral. The mansion's former glory was replaced by a large red brick apartment complex aptly named the Schwab House. The 19-story, 636-unit Schwab House was completed in 1950 and transitioned from rental to co-op in 1984. Marking the final chapter of the Charles M. Schwab Mansion's legacy. In the glittering heart of New York City, where ambition touches the sky, the legendary Vanderbilt Triple Palace Mansion once reigned supreme. Shining brightly on Fifth Avenue in the heart of the Gilded Age, in the Triple Palace's resplendent halls and opulent rooms, the creme de la creme of high society danced, dined, and whispered secrets, turning this grandiose residence into the pulsating heart of New York's elite. And this one-of-a-kind mansion wasn't merely a home, it was the very embodiment of extravagance and an architectural marvel that actually helped shape Fifth Avenue into the most famous street for luxury in the world. Yet, in a dramatic twist that echoes the capricious nature of the Vanderbilt fortune itself, this emblem of splendor and wealth spiraled into an unimaginable decline. In a heart-wrenching finale, this once majestic symbol of the unfathomable wealth in the Big Apple was demolished, its downfall a poignant reminder of the ephemeral nature of riches and the relentless march of time. In today's episode, we'll retell the entire saga of the legendary Vanderbilt Triple Palace, from its heyday to its shocking downfall, as we describe why New York's most luxurious Gilded Age mansion was demolished. In order to best understand both the unimaginable wealth and unspeakable demolition of the Triple Palace, we must first get acquainted with its owners. You see, in the history of America's Gilded Age during the late 19th century, the story of William Henry Vanderbilt soon took center stage as his surname became a byword for ambition and architectural grandeur. The son of Cornelius Vanderbilt, William Henry was born into a world where his father's remarkable journey from a modest farmer to a titan of industry cast a long shadow. Cornelius, who started with a simple ferry service in New York Harbor, expanded his empire into the realms of maritime trade and later the burgeoning railroad industry, all the while amassing unparalleled wealth and influence. Thus, William Henry grew up witnessing his father's relentless pursuit of success, a trait that profoundly shaped his own aspirations and approach to life. His upbringing, under the guidance of a father who was not just an entrepreneur but a tough-as-nails visionary, instilled in him a deep understanding of business and the importance of strategic thinking. Throughout his youth, William Henry often found himself at the receiving end of his father's harsh criticisms, with Cornelius frequently dismissing his eldest son as a blockhead and a blatherskit. Such harsh words left a deep impact on William Henry, who harbored a strong desire to prove to his father that he was far from being a blatherskite. Yet he never mustered the courage to confront the Commodore directly. This complex relationship with his father played a pivotal role in shaping William Henry for the enormous responsibilities he would later assume as the successor to the Vanderbilt legacy, and as the new patriarch in the family behind some of America's most grandiose early mega-mansions. Then the death of Cornelius in 1877 marked a turning point for William Henry, who inherited not just a colossal fortune, but also the onus of perpetuating the Vanderbilt dynasty. Consequently, in 1878, William Henry seized the moment to establish his own legacy and honor his father's grand visions by commencing the construction of what would be known as the Triple Palace. This endeavor was more than just the creation of a sumptuous residence. It was a tangible manifestation of the Vanderbilt family's ascending social prominence and William Henry's personal ambitions. Indeed, the project was likely a deliberate and strategic move to assert his worthiness as the steward of the Vanderbilt name, and to demonstrate that he had indeed emerged from the shadow of his father's overwhelming presence. Therefore, it is reasonable to assert that the construction of the Triple Palace was not just an architectural feat, but a psychological triumph for William Henry. In building such an extravagant mansion, he not only solidified his position as a formidable figure in business and society, but also symbolically contested his father's earlier doubts about his capabilities. We could perhaps say that it was William Henry's way of silently proclaiming to the world, and perhaps to the spirit of his late father, that he was indeed worthy of carrying the name Vanderbilt, and that this grand edifice stood as an emblem of his success. However, little did William Henry know that soon after the construction of his grand mansion was complete, he himself would meet an unexpected end, and have little time to enjoy this architectural icon built to give proof to his late father of his son's worthiness. In 1879, William Henry Vanderbilt first began to enliven his vision for what would become the Triple Palace by acquiring a prime land lot on the west side of Fifth Avenue, nestled between 51st and 52nd Streets. This site, once the domain of sheep farmer Isaiah Kaiser and positioned diagonally across from the majestic St. Patrick's Cathedral, came with a significant history and a hefty price tag of $500,000. A figure adjusted downward from its original $800,000 asking price in the aftermath of the Panic of 1873. However, this strategic acquisition was more than just an investment, it was a statement. The site's location and its exorbitant cost were reflective of the Vanderbilt family's rising prominence and their commitment to establishing a formidable presence on Fifth Avenue. And this vision for grandeur was shared by Vanderbilt's elder sons, Cornelius and William Kissam, who were concurrently planning their own stately residences nearby. Cornelius Vanderbilt, the second house, 5 blocks to the north, and William K. Vanderbilt House, just a block away. By April 1879, the stage was set, as existing tenants on the newly acquired property were vacated, paving the way for Vanderbilt's grand vision. The year 1881 marked the commencement of this monumental project. To bring his vision to life, he employed John B. Snook and Charles B. Atwood for the mansion's design and furnishing. Additionally, the renowned Herter brothers were brought on board to enhance the interior with their decorative expertise. Now, while Snook was officially the architect on record for the mansion, there is compelling evidence indicating the involvement of both Atwood and the Herter brothers in the project. This collaboration, however, was not without its complexities. The Herter brothers challenged the narrative that solely credited Snook or Atwood with the mansion's overall design, and this dispute reached a public forum when the Herter brothers voiced their concerns in a letter to American Architect and Building News. Responding to this contention, the journal's editors noted that the building permit for the mansion listed both Atwood and Snook's names, seemingly affirming their primary roles in the design process. This detail underscores the intricate dynamics and collaborative efforts behind the creation of Vanderbilt's mansion. The involvement of these distinguished architects and decorators, each with their unique contributions, illustrates the elaborate and multifaceted nature of this architectural endeavor. Now, the mansion's interiors, a fusion of luxury and cutting-edge design, featured a majestic staircase and state-of-the-art amenities, setting a new benchmark for residential grandeur. The design of the 58 rooms in Vanderbilt's section was a kaleidoscope of styles, each room a unique homage to the Vanderbilt family's diverse tastes, and meticulous attention to detail. Drawing inspiration from European palaces, the mansion's architectural blueprint, conceived in 1882, was a grandiose celebration of opulence on an unprecedented scale. The residence comprised two distinct sections, a southern single-family unit for William Henry Vanderbilt and a northern two-family unit for his daughters and their families. This innovative design concept allowed for familial proximity while respecting the individuality and privacy of its inhabitants. The palace's every detail, from spatial arrangements to decorative elements, was a deliberate expression of the Vanderbilts' aesthetic preferences. The ground floor housed an ornate dining room, library, parlor, and drawing room. The second floor was reserved for the private quarters of William, his wife, and their youngest children. A standout architectural marvel was the colossal ballroom, ingeniously designed to merge the drawing rooms of each section into a singular, expansive space spanning an entire city block. And the construction of the Triple Palace was a significant undertaking, mobilizing hundreds of workers and altering the very fabric of Midtown Manhattan. In 1883, the mansion pioneered the use of steel framing, a revolutionary technique that would later become synonymous with skyscraper construction. Additionally, imported marbles were integrated into the design, enhancing the mansion's luxurious appeal. These innovations were not merely aesthetic, they marked a significant advancement in architectural technology, laying the groundwork for the construction of more formidable structures. However, the project was not devoid of challenges. Integrating modern utilities into such an ambitious design was a formidable task, reflective of the broader complexities faced by architects during this era of rapid urbanization and technological progress. But then, the mansion's completion in 1882 was a remarkable achievement, showcasing the expertise and determination of the architects and workers. It comprised a southern single-family unit for Vanderbilt and a northern two-family unit for his daughters. Tragically, less than 5 years after its completion, William Henry Vanderbilt passed away in December 1885. His will ensured that the mansion and its contents would remain within the family, with his wife Maria receiving a life interest and his youngest son George a future interest in the property. However, despite the legendary patriarch's untimely demise coinciding with early days of the history of the mansion, the fun at the Triple Palace was actually just beginning. Now, the Triple Palace, in the 1890s, became synonymous with extravagant events, drawing the elite of New York society. These events were not mere social gatherings, but grand spectacles that held the city's attention. The Vanderbilt Ball, a highlight of this era, was more than a mere party. It was a magnificent display of wealth and power, changing the dynamics of New York's elite society. It began with a unique hobby horse quadrille and lasted until the early morning hours, leaving an indelible mark on the attendees and the city's social scene. And the guest list at these events read like a who's who of the Gilded Age. Members of the 400, led by Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, graced these events, setting the standards for high society, and their presence not only elevated the status of these gatherings, but also reflected the societal hierarchy of the time. Now, entertainment at the Triple Palace was diverse and opulent. Theatre troupes, ventriloquists, hypnotists, poets, comedians, choirs, and orchestras were regular features, providing a rich tapestry of experiences, and art exhibitions and lessons in singing, dancing, and cooking added to the cultural richness of the mansion, offering a variety of experiences to its distinguished guests. The media of the era played a pivotal role in amplifying the impact of these events. Newspapers, with their banner headlines and detailed coverage, brought these gatherings into the public domain, creating a buzz around the Triple Palace and its events. This coverage not only intensified the public's fascination, but also cemented the mansion's place in New York's social history. However, despite its grandeur and influence, the Triple Palace faced criticism, particularly for its overt display of wealth. But the mansion's architectural presence on Fifth Avenue significantly influenced the street's transformation into a prestigious address. Its opulence inspired the construction of other lavish mansions, not only in New York but also elsewhere, reflecting the era's emphasis on wealth and status. Thus, by the turn of the century, the Triple Palace had gained recognition for its architectural and social significance. Its influence extended beyond architecture and high society, playing a crucial role in transforming Fifth Avenue into a luxury retail destination. This Vanderbilt triple palace, in all its splendor, was therefore not just a home or a venue for gatherings, it was a cultural institution, a symbol of an era, and a reflection of the Vanderbilt family's stature in American history. However, almost as quickly as its heyday commenced, it would soon fall apart, as the valleys and peaks of the new tumultuous 20th century would begin. In the early 20th century, the architectural landscape of New York was undergoing a remarkable transformation. At the heart of this evolution was the southern half of the Vanderbilt Mansion, a splendid structure that caught the attention of Henry Clay Frick. A titan in the railroad industry, Frick was no stranger to luxury and prestige, and his interest in the mansion mirrored his ascent in the business world. It all started in January 1905, when Douglas Robinson of Robinson, Brown and Company informed Frick of the rental opportunity for this illustrious space. Seizing the moment, Frick and his wife embarked on an ambitious renovation project, spearheaded by Hunt and Hunt, costing a substantial $100,000 at the time. Their efforts brought modern touches to the mansion, introducing electric lighting and contemporary bathrooms, a clear reflection of their forward-thinking vision. And the renovation was more than an exercise in modernization. It was a statement of Frick's status. A new brownstone wall and a private driveway off Fifth Avenue were not merely functional but symbols of exclusivity and privacy. By October 1905, the Fricks had moved into this reimagined space, making it a home reflective of their stature. Despite attempts to purchase the mansion, legal constraints tied to Vanderbilt's will prevented this, leading Frick to eventually commission his own residence on the Upper East Side. But as the century further unfolded, societal shifts began to reshape the fabric of New York's elite. The preference for more intimate and discreet living spaces marked a departure from the grandeur of the Vanderbilt Triple Palace. The mansion, once a beacon of luxury, found itself at odds with the evolving ethos of high society. After Frick's departure, Cornelius Vanderbilt III undertook a $500,000 renovation under the guidance of Horace Trumbauer. This period marked a resurgence in the mansion's significance, hosting dignitaries and world leaders including Winston Churchill. Yet, as the 1920s dawned, the relentless march of commercialization along Fifth Avenue, coupled with escalating taxes, signaled a change. The once residential area was yielding to commercial interests, a shift that saw Emily Vanderbilt Sloan part with the northern residents. And then the Great Depression further complicated the Vanderbilt legacy. Financial pressures led to unprecedented decisions, such as opening the Biltmore estate to the public. Therefore, the Vanderbilt Triple Palace, a marvel of its time, similarly had to confront the realities of the era. The burdensome costs of upkeep in an economy gripped by depression made the maintenance of such a lavish property a challenge too great to surmount. And soon the ultimate decision would have to be made if it was worth it to even keep the mansion in existence at all. The year 1940 marked a significant turning point in the mansion's storied history. Cornelius III parted with the southern portion of the Triple Palace, selling it to the William Waldorf Astor estate. This transaction, executed contrary to the desires of the original builder and owner, the aforementioned William Henry Vanderbilt, signaled the commencement of a transformational era for the property. The Astor estate, keen on redevelopment, then sought to repurpose the site, which had become enveloped by burgeoning commercial enterprises, including the notable Rockefeller Center. It was during this transitory phase that the Vanderbilts orchestrated their last grand events within the mansion's walls. A brief glimpse into its majestic interiors was offered to the public in July 1941, with an admission fee aimed at supporting the United Service Organizations. Moreover, an American Red Cross benefit in February 1942 saw over 1,000 guests grace its halls. However, the demise of Cornelius III in March 1942 marked an end to its era of grandeur, as noted by the Herald Tribune. Then the Astor's vision for the site materialized in 1944, with plans for a commercial establishment. The following year witnessed Grace, Cornelius III's widow, auctioning off the Vanderbilt art collection, a sale that resulted in a financial loss compared to the collection's original value. However, tragically, the demolition of its southern section began in 1947, culminating in the complete razing of the structure by March 1949, paving the way for new buildings at 640 and 650 Fifth Avenue. And the mansion's downfall was met with media lamentation. acknowledging its role as a relic of a bygone era. Its replacement by modern commercial buildings signified a pivotal alteration in the city's architectural and socio-economic fabric. Yet, these days in the 21st century, fascination with the Gilded Age's architectural splendors, especially the Triple Palace, persists among historians and the general public. This interest is not merely nostalgic, but also serves as a source of inspiration for contemporary architectural pursuits, and the mansion's influence is notably seen in Henry Clay Frick's decision to construct a residence mirroring its style, now renowned as the Frick Collection. Therefore, the Triple Palace, in its journey from magnificence to memory, encapsulates more than just an architectural story. It represents a crucial chapter in New York's evolving identity, a reflection of the city's perpetual metamorphosis. Once upon a time, in the heart of New York City, stood a mansion so luxurious that it was known as the Jewel of Fifth Avenue. This eye-waveringly beautiful abode was the home of Louis Comfort Tiffany, one of the world's most famous jewelers and designers. Indeed, the mansion was a masterpiece of American architecture and design, symbolizing Tiffany's success and his love of art. And yet in 1936, the mansion was demolished, certainly a tragic loss for New York City, and to this day it remains a controversial topic. In today's video at Old Money Mansions, we'll explain how such a glittering jewel in the city that never sleeps could ever be removed, and tell you why New York's most luxurious mansion was demolished. Born into a family already bathed in the aura of luxury and artistry, Louis Comfort Tiffany was born in New York City on the 18th of February, 1848. He was the son of Harriet Olivia Avery Young and Charles Louis Tiffany, the latter being the founder of the inimitable jewelry empire, Tiffany & Company. Though his early life involved stints at military academies, the magnetic pull of the arts was irresistible, likely influenced by his father's involvement in fine and decorative arts. He sought the mentorship of renowned painter George Inness and had a meteoric rise, joining the American Society of Painters in watercolor by just 19, while his works found a place at the esteemed National Academy of Design. Indeed, Tiffany's artistic endeavors were not limited to one medium. His oeuvre stretched from painting to ceramics, jewelry design and metalwork, all through the transformative decades from the 1870s to the 1920s. However, he carved a niche in the annals of art history for his innovations in stained glass, making him an eminent figure in the American Art Nouveau movement. Specifically, his genius was part of the esteemed Associated Artists Collective, collaborating with such illustrious names as Lockwood de Forest, Candice Wheeler, and Samuel Coleman. Now one might surmise that a man of Tiffany's artistic passion and family legacy would seek to manifest his ideals in a personal space, a sanctuary of aesthetic expression. Thus the seeds were sown for the Tiffany Mansion. As a resounding statement of his family's artistic and business legacy, as well as his personal love for multiple art forms, the mansion could stand as an enduring edifice to creativity and luxury. And, when crafting this haven, Tiffany enlisted none other than the iconic architect Stanford White. White's name was synonymous with architectural elegance during that period, having designed the Washington Square Arch and the second Madison Square Garden. Additionally, we've featured Stanford White's achievement before in other episodes here at Old Money Mansions. Now, completed in 1885, the Tiffany Mansion stood as an architectural tour de force, a physical embodiment of Louis Comfort's unique artistry and a symbol of his illustrious family legacy. Not just a residence, but a monument to American art and design, the Tiffany Mansion incorporated Tiffany's passion for various artistic mediums into its very walls, while also serving as a beacon of his achievements. This structure, often associated with Louis Tiffany alone, was in fact an amalgamation of three distinct apartments. The first, reserved for Charles Louis Tiffany, remained unoccupied, a poignant symbol of a son's distant relationship with trade. The second apartment belonged to Louis's unmarried sister, Louise, while the third, spanning the fourth and fifth floors, became the private domain of Louis himself. This architectural masterpiece reached new heights with turrets, balconies, oriel windows, and a formidable tile roof as its cap. Yet its massive castle-like facade was met with mixed reviews, some finding it incongruent with the concept of a domestic dwelling. In contrast, others hailed it as one of the nation's finest examples of residential architecture. One feature often overlooked, but equally spectacular, was the colossal gable facing Madison Avenue. It had a 15-panel window that glowed onto Louis Tiffany's opulent studio, which was 80 feet wide and towering in height. This studio, veiled in curiosity and mystery, became integral to the mansion's allure. As the 1890s unfolded, the Tiffany mansion evolved into a symbol of opulence and artistic prowess. It was an embodiment of Louis Tiffany's unique artistic vision, a fusion of Islamic motifs and natural elements in the Art Nouveau style. Indeed, the mansion stood as a symbol of Tiffany's mastery in stained glass, with its windows captivating viewers with depictions of nature, religion, and mythology. Additionally, the mansion's opulence extended beyond its stained glass windows, as Tiffany commissioned custom furniture and furnishings crafted from precious metals and gemstones. It thus became an artistic headquarters where art, luxury, and innovation coexisted harmoniously. However, with such a grand entrance into the world of architecture, it seems almost unimaginable now that one day this lovely home would meet its eventual end, due to a confluence of harrowing factors that we will soon discuss. Throughout its heyday, the Tiffany Mansion would play host to lavish social events that further solidified its position as the epicenter of New York's elite society. The mansion's opulent interiors and Tiffany's artistic innovations were showcased to the city's luminaries and foreign dignitaries, who marveled at its grandeur as they enjoyed a series of socialite soirees hosted by Louis Comfort Tiffany himself. Indeed, these gatherings transcended mere entertainment. They were pivotal in solidifying Tiffany's position as a leading figure in New York society. Furthermore, for a while, amid economic downturns, the Tiffany Mansion displayed astounding resilience, and the year 1912 marked a period of remarkable innovations showcased within the mansion's walls, with innovative techniques such as the copper foil method and Favril glass taking center stage. These pioneering methods not only earned Tiffany recognition, but also set new standards in stained glass production. Soon thereafter, World War I would leave an indelible mark on the Tiffany Mansion. Louis Tiffany, leveraging his wealth and influence, actively supported the war effort, and the mansion would serve as a venue for fundraising events that rallied the community to contribute to the cause. In addition to financial contributions, Tiffany opened the mansion's doors for a noble purpose. It became a training center for nurses under the American Red Cross, and also housed a military hospital where wounded soldiers received essential care. Thus, during this period, the Tiffany Mansion went beyond its role as a symbol of opulence. It became a place where people came together to support the troops and provide vital aid to the wounded. Yet, as they always say, no good deed goes unpunished. And true to form, shortly after the cessation of hostilities in World War I, and, ironically, during the economic boom of the Roaring Twenties, Louis Comfort Tiffany's fortunes, and thus his lovely home, would be put in heart-stopping jeopardy. In 1922, the Tiffany family came to face financial struggles that affected the upkeep of their sumptuous mansion. Specifically, Louis Comfort Tiffany's sister, Louise, had to provide the foundation with $7,000 in funds, equivalent to over $100,000 today, and she repeated the gesture the following year with an additional $10,000 gift, which Tiffany himself also matched. The building was crumbling, a terrace had collapsed under the weight of snow, and combined with a hefty legal retainer to their lawyers, the foundation's finances were in peril. By 1927, the Tiffany family had decided to sell their Tiffany Park estate in Irvington to the Mathewson family. This marked the first shift in ownership of the mansion, which had been the site of Charles Tiffany's mansion since he and his niece's husband, banker James L. Dunham, purchased 50 acres from a financially strapped Ellis in 1863. And the Great Depression in 1931 further accelerated the mansion's decline. The economic realities of the time, along with several cumbersome maintenance issues at Laurelton Hall, made the foundation's financial situation increasingly precarious. The house and its grounds required constant upkeep, and the foundation's endowment needed to be frequently mined to keep the estate running. Louis Tiffany died in the 72nd Street house in 1933. And within 3 short years, his family's great mansion was demolished in 1936. However, this story may arguably not have a sad ending, for the demolition of the Tiffany Mansion in 1936 was not just an isolated event. It served as one of the catalysts for an architectural revolution in the subsequent decades. Several decades after the demolition of the iconic Tiffany Mansion, New Yorkers rallied for change after learning of the loss of such a magnificent structure. In 1965, Mayor Robert F. Wagner would sign groundbreaking legislation that resulted from this public outcry and established the Landmarks Preservation Commission. The destruction of the Tiffany Mansion, along with other heartbreaking demolitions like that of the old Penn Station, likely served as a poignant reminder of what was at stake, influencing New York's newfound commitment to safeguarding its architectural gems. Additionally, the Tiffany Mansion continued to live on in collective memory, partly thanks to its depiction in popular culture during the 1990s. Films such as Woody Allen's Manhattan and The Bonfire of the Vanities, along with the iconic television series Sex and the City, paid homage to the mansion, sparking renewed interest in its history. In Manhattan specifically, Woody Allen's character debates modern architecture within the mansion's setting, subtly criticizing the movement that often led to the loss of such historic buildings. Likewise, in The Bonfire of the Vanities, the mansion is a backdrop to the social intricacies of New York's elite, capturing its lasting cultural influence. Thus, even decades after its demolition, the Tiffany Mansion's allure remains practically undiminished. In the 2010s, it featured prominently in historical texts and exhibitions, with a notable example being its inclusion in the 2012 exhibition at the Museum of the City of New York, titled Lost New York. Such references signal an ongoing fascination with the mansion and, by extension, a continual examination of the importance of architectural preservation in shaping a city's identity. Indeed, the long-term impact of the mansion's demolition on New York's cultural and architectural scene may be difficult to quantify, but its absence speaks volumes. During the middle of the Gilded Age in the city that never sleeps, where steel meets sky and ambition knows no bounds, two monumental landmarks once soared above the rest: the Astor and Waldorf hotels. Think of them not merely as hotels, but as palaces of dreams, peak shrines of American extravagance. Erected in 1905, the Astor Hotel was a celestial wonder, an embodiment of Beaux-Arts elegance, crowned by a sky garden that almost touched the heavens. Just a stone's throw away, its sibling rival, the original Waldorf Hotel, had already unfurled its opulence in 1893. A monolith of majestic architecture, this masterpiece was conceived by none other than the iconic Henry Janeway Hardenberg, inspired by the lofty German Renaissance ideals. Yet what fueled such grandiosity? Family, or specifically the Astor family, one of America's most storied old money dynasties. William Waldorf Astor graced Fifth Avenue with the Waldorf first, laying down the gauntlet. Not to be outdone, his cousin John Jacob Astor IV took the challenge head-on, responding with the Astoria Hotel, each structure a flamboyant rebuttal to the other. And yet, despite standing as monoliths of splendor, these icons of opulence faced an unforeseeable destiny. They eroded, crumbled, and ultimately were razed to the ground. In this thrilling installment of old money mansions, join us as we retell a saga that consistently echoes through the corridors of architectural history. Why were New York's most opulent hotels demolished? In the bustling urban landscape of Gilded Age New York City, amidst Fifth Avenue's burgeoning architectural splendor, emerged the unparalleled duo of the Astor and Waldorf hotels. Stemming from a family rivalry between the affluent cousins, William Waldorf Astor and John Jacob Astor IV, these luxurious havens were erected as monuments to both grandeur and one-upmanship. It all begins in 1893 when William Waldorf Astor inaugurated the Waldorf Hotel, an opulent German Renaissance marvel designed by the eminent architect Henry Hardenberg. 4 years thereafter, itching with family rivalry, William's cousin John Jacob Astor IV would grace the adjacent plot with the towering Astoria Hotel, its particular design entrusted to the celebrated architects Schulze and Weaver. However, trouble was soon afoot in the family's game of hotelier thrones. In its inaugural year, William's Waldorf Hotel faced skepticism and was colloquially known as Bolt's Folly, attributed to the proprietor George Bolt, with critics condemning the luxurious hotel as a blight upon a respectable neighborhood. However, parrying the media's doubt, Bolt ingeniously planned a charity concert for St. Mary's Hospital for Children the day after the hotel's opening. With tickets priced at $5, $163 in today's currency. New York's elite filled the grand ballroom, dismissing earlier skepticism. Thus, by the end of its first year in 1893, the Waldorf had generated an incredible $4.5 million in revenue, an astonishing sum for the time that would equal over $100 million in 2023. Not long after, in 1897, John Jacob Astor IV inaugurated the Astoria Hotel adjacent to the Waldorf. Quickly seizing on an even larger opportunity, the cousins soon agreed to a truce, creating a unified entity known as the Waldorf Astoria. With 250 feet stretching from the sidewalk to its highest point, this combined colossus reigned as the world's largest hotel, having the buildings eventually being connected through a 300-foot marble corridor known as Peacock Alley. This Peacock Alley was soon seen as a grand promenade for the who's who of New York high society that connected the Waldorf and Astoria hotels, becoming an enduring symbol of the combined social and business establishments. Now, at a staggering expenditure of approximately $5 million, equivalent to $138 million today, the Waldorf Hotel graced Fifth Avenue and 33rd Street with its German Renaissance structure, consisting of an impressive 450 guest rooms, 15 opulent public rooms, and an additional 100 rooms designated for staff. Intricate architectural features such as loggias, balconies, and gables adorned the exterior. Inside, a breathtaking garden court featuring fountains and terracotta walls offered a sanctuary of splendor. Sienna marble, mosaic tile floors, and a coffered ceiling framed the entrance hall, immediately declaring the building's opulence to anyone crossing its threshold. Delving further into the Waldorf, you could see a marble entrance that leads to the Empire Room. This dazzling space, furnished with an alcove featuring elevators and a grand staircase, swiftly gained notoriety as one of New York City's premier dining establishments, rivaling even the likes of Delmonico's and Sherry's. You see, the room was an Empire-style marvel, resplendent with mahogany pilasters, gilded accents, and lavish frescoes. Adjacent to this culinary delight was the Marie Antoinette Parlor, an elegant reception room graced with 18th-century European antiques, including a cherished bust of Marie Antoinette. Bearing artistic excellence, the ceiling showcased frescoes by Will Highcock Lowe, with The Birth of Venus as the central piece. Further enhancing the hotel's splendor was the Gentleman's Cafe, a hunting-themed sanctuary adorned with robust black oak paneling and staghorn chandeliers. This was complemented by suites such as the Henry IV drawing room, furnished with rare French and Italian antiques, as well as a banquet hall seating 20 and a music room. And while the Waldorf was indeed a paragon of opulence, its sibling, the Astor Hotel, was no less grand. Opened in 1897 and situated at the intersection of Fifth Avenue and 34th Street, this 16-story marvel was also designed by Henry J. Hardenberg. Boasting 25 public rooms and 550 guest rooms, its dimensions were grandiose, extending 270 feet from its sub-basement to its roofline. Constructed of stone, marble, and brick, its architectural style was a harmonious blend of French Second Empire and Austrian Baroque influences. A double set of plate glass doors graced the entrance, alongside a U-shaped driveway for carriages and horses. As you would navigate the Astor, to the left of Peacock Alley resided the Astor Dining Room. This expansive space showcased Italian Renaissance pilasters, Russian marble columns, and silk hangings in rose pompadour. Directly opposite lied the Garden Court of Palms, a triple-height dining venue adorned with a dome-like roof of amber glass. Here, the Italian architectural influences were elegantly portrayed through grey and terracotta hues, embellished with Pavonazzo marble. The cafe, found on the 34th Street side, was a spacious room finished in English oak and accented with German Renaissance and Flemish decorations. Proceeding to the first floor, you'd find the Astor Gallery, a luxurious space graced with towering French windows and a color scheme of blue, grey, and gold. Nearby, the Colonial Room contrasted its red ambience with white woodwork, adding another layer of complexity to the design palette. On the second floor, a private suite of apartments in Old English oak offered a range of amenities, including large drawing rooms and a butler's pantry. And above the third floor, the hotel transitioned to suites and bedrooms, each offering unique luxuries like individual baths and spacious trunk closets. However, the crown jewel in the Astor was undoubtedly the ballroom. Conceived in the Louis XIV style, This grandiose space could accommodate 700 guests for banquets and 1,200 for concerts. Adorned in shades of ivory, grey and cream, it welcomed the most cherished voices of its day, with season tickets for musical performances costing up to $350, around 12 grand in today's dollars, underscoring the high value placed on cultural offerings held within these hallowed walls. Upon entering the zenith of the hotel, you'd find a paradisiacal roof garden encased in glass, adorned with rattan furnishings in shades of pale green and pink. A stroll along the 34th Street side revealed the Grand Promenade, Peacock Alley, a lofty terrace furnished with a bandstand, fountains and trellises. Adjacent was the Roof Garden restaurant, possessing a high ceiling that stretches 24 feet above the floor. At the corners of this exalted realm were spiral stairways within towers, ascending to the copper roofs of pavilions that stand a staggering 250 feet above the ground level. Thus, from its subterranean machinery to its skyward gardens, from its shaky beginnings to its golden reputation, the Waldorf and Astor hotels embodied both engineering excellence and unparalleled luxury, forever imprinted in New York's architectural and cultural history. Now, from their earliest days, both the Astor and Waldorf hotels became synonymous with glittering social events, with philanthropic dinners and balls frequented by luminaries like Andrew Carnegie. The resplendence extended to hosting dignitaries like Viceroy Li Hungchang of China, who in 1896 imported 100-year-old eggs and even his kitchen staff. Upon his departure, Li graced every female guest with a basket of roses and lavished generous tips on the hotel personnel. The Astor and Waldorf additionally pushed the envelope in hospitality. From Prince Henry of Prussia, who enjoyed a private door and elevator, to a staff forming an emergency bucket brigade for his royal bath, the level of service was unparalleled. Exclusivity extended to guest policies as well, allowing only registered individuals access to rooms, thereby upholding a superlative standard of etiquette. Membership clubs within the premises offered perks like preferential pricing and discounted spa treatments, attracting an even more elite clientele. The Waldorf Astoria Bar, established in 1893, was the sanctuary of the city's financial magnates and vivid personalities, from Diamond Jim Brady to Buffalo Bill Cody. Even the cocktail world owes its heritage to this establishment, credited with inventions like the Rob Roy and the Bobby Burns. But here's the paradox. The very grandeur that made these establishments landmarks of American luxury also sowed the seeds of their own downfall. As we sit here basking in the glory of the Astor and Waldorf hotels' most radiant days, a looming shadow creeps closer, whispering a harrowing question that we can no longer ignore. What catastrophic chain of events could pull these icons down from their lofty heights? Sadly, the halcyon days of the original Astor and Waldorf hotels soon met an inexorable decline, compelled by an interplay of economic downturns, ownership transitions, and societal evolution. Thus, as the years marched on, the Astor family's grip on the hotel industry loosened, signaling a change in leadership that would have profound implications. Initially, these grand hotels had captivated New York City, hosting society's elite and even contributing innovations to the world of cocktails and hospitality. They epitomized luxury, becoming glittering settings for illustrious balls, philanthropic dinners, and visits from foreign dignitaries. But as the 20th century unfolded, fresh competitors emerged. Luxurious new establishments like the St. Regis sprung up, endowed with modern amenities that lured away clientele. The Astor and Waldorf found themselves as relics in a city that had moved forward, the glamorous heart of New York City shifting northward beyond 34th Street. Then, the Great Depression struck in 1929, casting a dark shadow over these citadels of extravagance. Eroded by financial constraints, their luster dulled significantly, setting the stage for a diminishing role in a city always chasing the next big thing. Adding insult to injury, the costs of preserving their architectural grandeur began to spiral out of control. Ensuring their structural integrity while maintaining lavish interiors became an insurmountable challenge, pushing them further into decline. Furthermore, as New York City evolved, so did its land value. The very ground upon which these hotels stood became coveted real estate, more valuable than the aging structures themselves. This paved the way for the demolition of the original Waldorf Astoria in 1928, making room for none other than the Empire State Building. Yet, although the original Waldorf Astoria was razed to make room for the Empire State Building, the legend was far from over. In 1931, a new Waldorf Astoria was resurrected on Park Avenue, and the name once again captivated the imagination of the public. This new location recaptured much of the original grandeur and became an iconic symbol in its own right, playing host to presidents, celebrities, and dignitaries. While it wasn't completely shielded from the economic and societal forces that had impacted its predecessor, the Park Avenue Waldorf Astoria stood as an enduring beacon of luxury, proving that the allure of a name could transcend time and place. Yet, despite this resurgence, a definitive end was marked for the Astor family's hotel empire on May 3, 1929, when they sold their remaining interests to the developers of the Empire State Building. The original structures disappeared, their once mesmerizing elegance archived in the New York Public Library. But the Waldorf Astoria name lived on, solidifying its place as an irreplaceable jewel in the crown of New York City's rich history. Picture a building that transcends the mere concept of a set of apartments. Rather, this iconic structure stands as an emblem of cultural sophistication and architectural brilliance. Indeed, the Dakota Building, located on 72nd Street in Manhattan's now illustrious Upper West Side, has long served as the domestic home for cultural luminaries, from rock gods to famed authors, yet its halls are equally famed for inexplicable phenomena, rendering it one of the most enigmatic locations one could reside in. In today's episode of Old Money Mansions, we'll embark on an architectural quest to unravel the design mysteries that haunt this luxurious dwelling, sifting through the evidence and the folklore, striving to disentangle reality from mere illusion within its storied walls. On a crisp fall afternoon in 1880, an air of electric anticipation hung over a throng of spectators assembled on Manhattan's Upper West Side. Their eyes were fixed on an architectural marvel, poised to redefine opulence, the Dakota. Standing tall amidst quaint brownstones, the Dakota's audacious facade of red brick and golden sandstone struck a compelling contrast, echoing an unequivocal ambition to stand apart. Indeed, it wasn't merely a building, it was a canvas painted with audacity and vision by its creator, Edward Clark. Now, Clark was no ordinary developer. Affluent and forward-thinking, he harbored an aspiration to sculpt a haven for New York City's creme de la creme. Specifically, he aimed to craft an edifice that could go toe-to-toe with Fifth Avenue's grand mansions, yet infuse the safety and amenities of modern apartment living. And so, Clark's dream materialized in the form of the Dakota, a paragon of luxury and technological innovation during its era. It was to be not only a place to rest your head, but a symbol in the art of living well. Central heating would warm the vast airy chambers, while gaslighting cast a glow over hardwood floors and intricate fireplaces that were nothing short of art pieces. However, Clark's vision transcended mere opulence. He aspired to build more than just a residence, but also a sanctuary for an intellectual and creative fellowship. A fervent supporter of the arts himself, he pictured the Dakota as a magnetic hub where artists, authors, and musicians would coalesce, amplifying each other's creativity. But Clark's ambitions didn't stop at the Dakota's luxurious walls. He viewed the Upper West Side, then a sparsely populated district, as a fertile ground awaiting cultivation. He rightly anticipated that the Dakota would spark a chain reaction, transforming the area into a flourishing enclave, and time would vindicate his foresight. Architecturally, the Dakota is a fusion of aesthetic sensibilities. Romanesque arches coexist with Gothic embellishments and Renaissance flair. Its central tower, accompanied by smaller turrets, crowns the facade, embellished with crenellations that lend the structure an air of an urban castle. And indeed, stepping inside is an experience in itself. The grand lobby unfolds as a cathedral of affluence, marked by sky-high ceilings supported by towering marble pillars. Residences feature spacious layouts, punctuated by grandiose fireplaces and sweeping hardwood floors. Thus, from its earliest days, the Dakota became a magnet for high-caliber tenants, cultured, accomplished, and globally recognized. Painters like Edward Hopper and Winslow Homer, literary icon Edith Wharton, and musical virtuoso Leonard Bernstein were among its pioneering occupants. This ensemble of luminary tenants, along with its prime location facing the verdant expanse of Central Park, catapulted the Dakota into becoming a highly coveted address. Its inception marked not just the birth of a building, but the transformation of the Upper West Side, a crucible of New York's burgeoning affluence and cosmopolitan sophistication. As for the name the Dakota, it was purportedly so nicknamed because, at the time of its construction, the Upper West Side was considered as remote as the Dakota Territory. This humorous moniker underscores the pioneering spirit that imbued this iconic building, a spirit that turned a remote area into a cornerstone of Manhattan elegance. Now, at the dawn of the 20th century, the Dakota's allure as a sanctuary for the stars reached celestial heights. Stage and screen luminaries like Judy Garland and Boris Karloff found their haven within its storied walls. These glittering personalities were not just enticed by its opulent suites and sweeping park views, they were equally enchanted by the privacy and security that the building unfailingly offered, precious commodities in the world of fame. Surprisingly, even the grim era of the Great Depression failed to dim the Dakota's luster. Despite the pervasive economic gloom, the building remained a siren call to wealthy New Yorkers. The rent, though lofty, was within reach for the city's well-heeled denizens. During these years, the Dakota became a refuge for such cultural titans as actress Rosalind Russell, wit and writer Dorothy Parker, and musical genius Cole Porter. In the face of adversity, these figures maintained their upscale lives, ensconced in luxury that belied the nation's troubles. Thus, by 1957, the Dakota had etched its name so deeply into the cultural fabric of New York that it was christened a city landmark. This wasn't just a protective designation, it was an accolade that cemented the building's place as a historical and cultural epicenter, safeguarding its eclectic architectural grandeur for generations to come. And the 1960s saw the Dakota soaring to new pinnacles of cultural prominence. A recurring backdrop in seminal films like Rosemary's Baby and classics like The Way We Were, it became inseparable from American pop culture. Visitors and celebrities thronged the building, spellbound by its illustrious lineage and architectural splendor. Its towering presence became not just a luxury residence, but a living narrative of New York's glamorous and intricate past. However, during the 1970s and 80s, the Dakota's radiant aura encountered a series of eclipses that cast shadows across its fabled existence. On the 8th of December 1980, the aura darkened immeasurably when John Lennon, the iconic musician and resident, was slain at the building's entrance. The air, once filled with the optimistic chords of Imagine, now felt thick with sorrow and incredulity. Globally, hearts ached, and the Dakota too carried the profound burden of that grief. It is indeed harrowing how the soul of a building can shift, not by its own actions, but through external events that play out on its threshold. Desperate to salvage the Dakota's earlier charisma, the Co-op Board enacted a labyrinth of stringent policies. Gaining residency was no longer just arduous. It had evolved into a Herculean trial. Designed to fortify, these regulations were critiqued as potentially exclusionary, walking a fine line between sanctuary and elitism. The building's formidable gates stood as dual emblems, equally inviting and repelling, depending on one's vantage point. In 1984, the Dakota's complex persona acquired additional layers of complication. Allegations of wrongful eviction and anti-Semitic sentiments rattled the building's foundations, albeit metaphorically. Although these charges receded into the obscurity of out-of-court resolutions, the tarnish on the Dakota's reputation remained indelible. By the time 1988 rolled around, the building's security architecture had been elevated to fortress-like levels. A matrix of cameras scrutinized every inch, guards patrolled its corridors, and gates stood sentinel at its entrance. For some, these measures transmuted the Dakota into an impassable citadel, contrasting sharply with its erstwhile identity as an inviting hub of culture and creativity. Thus, the ebbs and flows of history remind us that structures like the Dakota are more than mere conglomerations of stone and wood. They are living entities, pulsating with the joys and sorrows that life bestows upon them. Now, as you might know, Yoko Ono has long been an influential catalyst in shaping the Dakota's narrative. Since purchasing an apartment with John Lennon in 1972, a space she would hauntingly continue to occupy after his 1980 assassination, Ono has wielded her platform to champion peace and justice from within the Dakota's storied walls. In 1991, she graced the rooftop with a radiant white Imagine sign, a visual echo of Lennon's timeless hymn for unity and love. A year later, she sanctified Strawberry Fields, a verdant sliver of Central Park opposite the Dakota, as a memorial to Lennon. Through her artistic endeavors and vocal activism, Ono has not only elevated the building's cultural prominence, but also enriched its atmosphere, molding it into a beacon for creators and advocates alike. Even during the 2008 financial maelstrom, the Dakota remained largely unshaken, its roots anchored deeply within the realm of New York real estate. This resilience can be credited to its co-op structure, offering its residents a communal control over finances and decision-making processes. Nestled in the perennially sought-after Upper West Side, its location adds another layer of immunity to market volatility, preserving the value of its lavish apartments. Thus, even with its hefty price tag and exhaustive vetting process, the allure of the Dakota continues to bewitch high-profile names. A constellation of celebrities, ranging from Madonna and Sting to David Letterman and the late Lauren Bacall, have all been captivated by the building's amalgamation of historical allure, strategic placement, and fortress-like security. And in 2018, a comprehensive renovation graced the Dakota, merging its timeless elegance with modern-day opulence. Meticulously supervised by the co-op board and an ensemble of architects and designers, the refurbishment left no stone unturned, though it conscientiously preserved the building's iconic facade and original elements. The updates were not merely superficial, but penetrative, reaching into the architectural skeleton to bolster infrastructure and extend new amenities. Both residents and critics celebrated these modifications, confirming the Dakota's indelible status as one of the most enviable residences in the concrete canyons of New York City. These days, in the face of an ultra-competitive New York real estate market that has seen record sales and sky-high prices, the Dakota maintains its stature as one of the most coveted addresses in the city. Indeed, the escalating median sale prices of its apartments, from $10 million in 2019 to $11.5 million in 2020 and reaching $12 million in 2021, demonstrate the building's enduring allure. Several factors contribute to its magnetism: the irreplaceable vintage charm, a prime location on the Upper West Side, and a roster of residents graced by the glitterati. Security is also a top priority, adding yet another layer to its appeal. And in embracing the wave of technological advancements, the Dakota is no laggard. A 2022 overhaul saw the implementation of a cutting-edge security apparatus, encompassing updated camera systems, advanced access controls, and sensitive intrusion detection mechanisms. The aim for this is unambiguous: to offer an impregnable sanctuary for its illustrious inhabitants. Likewise, lifestyle amenities received a fresh infusion of modernity. A new fitness center, replete with state-of-the-art equipment, and a luxurious spa offering an array of treatments, were unveiled to residents. Thus, the fusion of historic elegance and contemporary conveniences positions the Dakota as an exceptional dwelling that offers the best of both epochs. It's a juxtaposition that residents find irresistibly captivating, enabling them to luxuriate in an environment that is both anachronistic and avant-garde. Furthermore, beyond its physical attributes, the Dakota has indelibly imprinted itself on the American cultural psyche. Its frequent cinematic and televisual features, coupled with its association with watershed moments like John Lennon's assassination, make it more than just a structure. It's a narrative focal point where culture, tragedy, and celebrity intersect. The Great Gatsby is a novel and subsequent set of films that has stood the test of time, capturing the essence of the Gilded Age in America. Its descriptions of decadence, class, and power relations in the high society sects of the Gold Coast on Long Island, New York during the Roaring Twenties paint a vivid picture of an area filled with the magnificent Gilded Age mansions of the Gold Coast area, inspiring artists, writers, and socialites alike. From the majesty of their architecture to the glamour of their parties, these mansions represent the excess and extravagance of the era. So raise that highball glass of your Leonardo DiCaprio style, and let's take a journey into the 5 most amazing mansions of the Gold Coast that served as inspirations for The Great Gatsby, both the novel and its film adaptations. Number 5, Beacon Towers at Sands Point, New York. In the midst of a time of eye-watering wealth on Long Island's Gold Coast, one house stood out. A house that was said to have inspired the creation of the iconic mansion of J. Gatsby. According to F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gatsby's sprawling abode looked like a factual imitation of some Hotel de Ville in Normandy, with a tower on one side, spanking new under a thin bead of raw ivy, and marble swimming pool and more than 40 acres of land. Indeed, as we can see, in addition to the word tower literally being in this palatial estate's name, its spires overlooking the water would be an excellent living representation of Fitzgerald's vision for Gatsby's mansion. Regarding its creation, Beacon Towers was the brainchild of Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, a woman who was known for her insatiable appetite for building. Alva was a true builderholic, commissioning architectural marvels left, right, and center. From her famous Vanderbilt Chateau on Fifth Avenue to the still-standing palace in Newport, Rhode Island called Marble House, she was a woman who knew how to make a statement. Her passion for building was so great that she even became the first woman ever elected to become a member of the American Institute of Architects. Some say it was because she commissioned so many houses in her lifetime. In 1917, Alva had the architectural firm Hunt and Hunt Design for her castle overlooking the Long Island Sound. She is said to have remarked upon seeing a real Scottish castle that her house on Long Island was more authentic. The result, Beacon Towers, is a remarkable work of architecture, with a fascinating blend of influences that give it a unique character. While it is primarily classified as a Gothic-style building, it also incorporates elements of other historical styles, including the Alcazars of Spain, which are fortified castles or palaces with distinctive architectural features. In addition to this, the designers of the mansion drew inspiration from illuminated manuscripts from the medieval period, which often depicted castles and other grand structures. Inside the Beacon Towers, there were numerous rooms, with the primary rooms numbering around 60 and the total room count exceeding 140. This is an impressive feat of engineering, as it required careful planning and construction to accommodate so many spaces within a single building. Each room likely had its own unique purpose, with some being used for dining, others for entertainment, and still others for sleeping or working. The exterior of the mansion was equally striking, with the entire structure being coated in a smooth, gleaming white stucco. This gave it a clean, polished appearance that would have made it stand out from the other buildings in the area. It also would have required a great deal of maintenance to keep it looking so pristine, which speaks to the level of care and attention that the owners likely put into the upkeep of their home. As we'll see in a minute, the location of Beacon Towers had a key role to play in relation to other homes that inspired mansions in The Great Gatsby. But years after the book was published, in the late 1920s, William Randolph Hearst, the ultra-wealthy media tycoon and builder of California's famous Hearst Castle, purchased Beacon Towers and renovated it, making it even larger and more opulent. However, as with all things in this world, nothing stays the same forever. The house was demolished in the early 1940s, leaving behind only memories of its glory days. Despite this, Beacon Towers is firmly planted in the history books as a direct inspiration for one of the greatest novels in American history. Number 4, Land's End at Sandpoint, New York. Next on our list for sumptuous residences that inspired The Great Gatsby is an iconic Gold Coast mansion that stood for over a century. It is most often cited as the inspiration for the home of Tom and Daisy Buchanan, although its architectural provenance are shrouded in mystery and rumor to this very day. Known colloquially as Land's End, this grand estate has been the subject of much speculation, with some attributing its construction to none other than the esteemed architect Stanford White, and yet such claims remain unverified. For if the mansion was indeed erected in 1911, as some suggest, it could not have been the work of White, who had long since passed on by that point. But even if we set aside such uncertainties, what do we make of this mansion? Certainly it possesses classic grandeur, with its white facade and imposing columns, features common to many mansions of its ilk. Furthermore, Land's End Mansion was one of the last Gilded Age jewels of the Gold Coast, and was a sailing landmark that rose above its surroundings with grandeur and grace. If you take a look at maps of the immediate area, you'll also notice that in the book, both the Buchanan Mansion and Gatsby's house are situated on the same side of the harbour, and they're even within walking distance of each other along the beach. While it's uncertain whether you could see Daisy's house from Gatsby's, it's clear that they're not on opposite sides of the water. In fact, both mansions are located in Sands Point, at the tip of Port Washington. Fitzgerald is known to have reimagined Sands Point as East Egg in his novel, a place where old established money resided, as opposed to the flashy new millionaires like Gatsby who would have lived in West Egg. In reality, this would have been the town of Great Neck, New York, where Fitzgerald himself lived. While Great Neck did have some estates and mansions of its own, they were generally not on the same grand scale as those in Sands Point, though the town still drew many famous people from Broadway and the arts scene. Returning to the matter of the Gatsby and Buchanan mansions themselves, both homes faced east towards the shore of Glen Cove. According to the book, Gatsby's mansion would have been on the eastern shore of Great Neck, looking across at the western shore of Sands Point, where Daisy's mansion was situated. Thus, if you visit the area and have read Fitzgerald's book, or even simply watched Baz Luhrmann's 2013 film adaptation of The Great Gatsby, you will likely recognize the parallels of both Land's End and Beacon Towers due to their locations, which surely has made it easier for filmmakers to plan how to shoot famous scenes. However, to complete your understanding of the geographic relationship of the mansions of The Great Gatsby, you'll most certainly need to answer, where was the iconic dock located? Which we answer in number 3, Pembroke, Glen Cove, New York. On the other side of the water from Beacon Towers, or as we now can think of it, Gatsby's mansion, stood a home so grand, so spectacular, that it defies easy description. This was Pembroke, a sprawling estate situated in Glen Cove, built by the illustrious Captain de la Mare before being purchased by Marcus Lowe, the famed movie theatre magnate. It was at Pembroke that Fitzgerald likely attended some of the most raucous and extravagant parties of the Roaring Twenties, where the glitterati of silent cinema, including legends like Gloria Swanson and Rudolph Valentino, would come to see and be seen. One can only imagine the inspiration that Fitzgerald drew from these revelries, which served as the basis for many of the parties depicted in his novel. And let us not forget the dock, a long, slender stretch of wood jutting out into the water, culminating in a light that shone like a beacon in the darkness. I'm sure many of us remember the key part, the dock, even in the recent 2013 adaptation. It must have been a sight to behold, visible even from the windows of Gatsby's own mansion. This was no ordinary home. It was designed for entertaining on a grand scale, with long, spacious party rooms that could accommodate hundreds of guests at a time. A sprawling edifice spanning some 60,000 square feet, this opulent estate boasted no less than 12 bedrooms and 12 baths, along with a billiard room, den, dining room and mirrored breakfast room. And yet, there was more to this mansion than just its impressive dimensions. The owner, Captain de la Mare, was a man of many talents, including a remarkable proficiency on the pipe organ, an instrument he would play at the base of his own stairway. From the mansion's large windows, one could gaze out upon the exquisite gardens, the private bathing casino, and the boat landing on the Long Island Sound. But that's not all. For the truly athletic, there were squash courts, shooting ranges, and even a gymnasium to keep one's body in peak condition. And when it was time to unwind, there was a private movie theatre adorned with murals depicting some of the era's most popular silent films, including perhaps such classics as The Sheik. But sadly, as with many of the homes on this list, and indeed Gilded Age estates in general, Pembroke's grandeur was lost to time. In the 1960s, the mansion was torn down and replaced with a collection of smaller homes, marking the end of an era and the passing of a legacy. Number 2, Harbour Hill, Roslyn. Built for Clarence Hungerford Mackay and his wife Kitty Dewar, this mansion overlooked Hempstead Harbour on Long Island's legendary Gold Coast. With some 80,000 square feet of living space, this mansion ranks as the 8th largest historic house in the entire United States, a testament to the boundless wealth and ambition of its owners. Yet this mansion was more than just a symbol of extravagance. It is likely a key inspiration for The Great Gatsby as well. See, the Mackays were known for throwing big and lavish parties, and they did so often. One of their most famous parties was held in 1924 for Edward, Prince of Wales, who was visiting New York for the first time. That night, they invited an astounding 1,200 guests to the party, and it was a sight to behold. The maples that lined the drive were decorated with small blue lights, and the roof of the house was covered in red, white, and blue lights, arranged to look like the American flag. The lights were so bright that they could be seen from far away in Roslyn Harbor. Some scholars believe that this party and its striking decorations inspired F. Scott Fitzgerald to consider calling his new book Under the Red, White, and Blue, before ultimately settling on The Great Gatsby. Now, this incredible mansion was the creation of architect Stanford White, who, unlike the rumors around number 4, Land's End, definitely did create this building, and is a marvel of design and engineering that stood as the largest private residence ever completed by this celebrated master of his craft. The approach to Harbor Hill is a breathtaking facade. Wrought iron gates covered with a slate mansard roof stood sentry on either side of the entrance, flanked by ivy-covered stone gate lodges that remain to this day, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. A mile-long drive, lined with majestic maple trees and costing a staggering $150,000 to build, wound its way up the steep hill towards the Baroque-style chateau that awaited at its peak. But the true marvels of Harbor Hill were found within. The interiors, designed by Allard and Son of Paris and Davenport and Sons of Boston, were a marvel of opulence and excess, overseen with exacting care by none other than Kitty McKay herself. The entrance hall, panelled in rich oak and lit by a dominant brass lamp, boasted a wide staircase with an intricately carved banister leading up to a grandfather clock on the first landing. And at one end of the room stood a vast marble fireplace, excavated from a European palace, flanked by 17th century tapestries and choir stalls salvaged from an old French church. But it was Kitty's bathroom on the second floor that truly defied description, a masterpiece of design and engineering, with a bath alone costing a staggering $50,000, carved from a single block of marble and sunk into the floor. The bathroom was an extension of her dressing room and vast boudoir, which occupied most of the second floor and boasted soft furnishings, lamps, tables, and even palm fronds. And let us not forget the treasures that awaited in the other rooms of Harbor Hill. The library, dining room, and billiards room, with their immense marble fireplaces, polar bear and tiger skin rugs, and dozens of trophy stags' heads. And the white drawing room, which doubled as a ballroom, decorated in the white and gold style of Louis XV, with panels of mirrors and no windows to speak of. And as if all this were not enough, Harbor Hill also boasted one of the greatest private art collections in all of America, filled with masterpieces from the Renaissance era by such luminaries as Botticelli, Raphael, Duccio, and Mantegna. Number 1, Oheka Castle, New York. And last, we end on perhaps the crowning jewel of The Great Gatsby's influence, if for no other reason that it is meticulously maintained today, and you can visit it and walk its majestic grounds and interiors, Oheka Castle. The magnificent estate served as arguably the key inspiration for the grandeur and excess of Leonardo DiCaprio's mansion in Baz Luhrmann's 2013 adaptation of The Great Gatsby. However, outside of a simple Hollywood visual update, to truly appreciate the splendor of Oheka Castle, one must delve into its fascinating history, a story of ambition, wealth, and architectural genius. The story of Oheka Castle begins with its owner, Otto Hermann Kahn, a titan of industry, finance, and philanthropy, who made his fortune in the early 20th century. In 1914, Kahn enlisted the services of the renowned architectural firm Delano and Aldrich to design his dream home, a grand and opulent estate that would be the envy of all who laid eyes on it. And so it was that Oheka Castle began to take shape, a sprawling French-style chateau that would come to be one of the most iconic homes in America. Construction of Oheka Castle was a monumental undertaking, taking 3 years and over 1,000 workers to complete. The castle boasted 127 rooms, 39 of which were bedrooms, and was set on over 400 acres of meticulously landscaped gardens, ponds, and fountains. The interiors were every bit as magnificent as the exterior, with rich wood paneling, intricate carvings, and ornate chandeliers throughout. One of the most striking features of Oheka Castle was its grand ballroom, a vast double-height space with a soaring ceiling and crystal chandeliers that illuminated the room with a dazzling light. The ballroom was the perfect setting for Kahn's legendary parties, which were attended by some of the most prominent figures of the day, from politicians and business magnates to movie stars and socialites. But the true marvel of Oheka Castle is its grounds, a veritable paradise of gardens, terraces and water features that stretched out for acres in every direction. The gardens are laid out in a series of formal parterres, with hedges and flower beds arranged in intricate patterns. The terraces offered sweeping views of the estate and the surrounding countryside, while the ponds and fountains provided a sense of tranquility and calm. It is little wonder, then, that Oheka Castle served as the inspiration for the opulence and extravagance of Luhrmann's film adaptation. For Oheka Castle is not merely a home but a true work of art, a testament to the power of wealth and imagination, and a reminder of a bygone era of glamour and excess. So you've joined us once again, and a curious question has already formed in your mind. Why would the bustling metropolis New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps, choose to demolish one of its most treasured architectural icons? Pennsylvania Station, adorned in rich Beaux-Arts glory, was once a proud beacon in the rapidly growing New York skyline. Each of its ornate waiting rooms, broad concourses and grand staircases were works of art, echoing stories of countless journeys and heartfelt reunions, whispered in the hallowed echoes of its cavernous halls. Yet, as the bard would say, therein lies the rub. How did such a remarkable monument to grandeur and elegance succumb to the swing of the wrecking ball, replaced by a functional but far less awe-inspiring transportation hub? In today's episode of Old Money Mansions, we will guide you through the captivating story of its creators, their daring vision to construct such a grand station in the heart of America's largest city, and its unfortunate downfall, as we describe, why New York's most beautiful public building was demolished. In order to answer this question fully, of course, we'll have to explain why the legendary old Penn Station in New York was built in the first place. In the beginning, it was meticulously designed as a formidable competitor to New York's Grand Central Terminal, with the clear aim to endow the Pennsylvania Railroad with an uninterrupted conduit into Manhattan, indisputably the paramount economic hub in America during that period. Before the rise of this iconic early 20th century landmark, Manhattan's only railway gateway was monopolized by the Vanderbilt family's New York Central Railroad, which came from the north across the Harlem River. The transportation landscape of New York was indeed considerably restricted, with only the New York Central Railroad having the privilege of direct entry into Manhattan through Grand Central. This created a rather challenging scenario for other railroads, particularly the Pennsylvania Railroad, seeking to establish a direct presence in the city. The Pennsylvania Railroad's initiative to break this monopoly was spearheaded by its president, Alexander Cassatt, who commissioned the construction of Penn Station. Born in 1839 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Alexander Johnston Cassatt was the seventh president of the company, with his tenure running from June 9, 1899, until his death on December 28, 1906. Alexander was the eldest amongst his siblings, and his career trajectory began as an engineer with the Pennsylvania Railroad. Over the years, Cassatt proved himself a maestro in managing transportation logistics. In order to gain proper training, he first graduated from the distinguished Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, a rigorous academic institution that also nurtured the genius behind the design of the Brooklyn Bridge, Washington Roebling. Now, Cassatt's uncompromising work ethic, exemplary integrity and steadfast commitment to the railroad, its workforce and stakeholders set him apart. His monumental achievements during the industrial age propelled him into the sights of the era's luminaries such as Vanderbilt, Rockefeller and Morgan. In fact, he was one of the rare individuals to be known to have the sincere respect of financier J.P. Morgan. For the monumental task of constructing the old New York Penn Station, Cassatt entrusted the architectural firm McKim, Mead and White, a decision influenced by their reputable standing and successful past projects. Founded by Charles Follen McKim, William Rutherford Mead and Stanford White, this firm was instrumental in shaping the architectural practice, urbanism and the paradigms of the American Renaissance in New York at the turn of the century. Known for their distinct Beaux-Arts masterpieces, which drew heavy inspiration from their European travels, the firm was responsible for several notable works such as Columbia University's library, the Brooklyn Museum in New York City, the Boston Public Library, and numerous opulent residences in Newport, Rhode Island. In his quest for a grand and monumental station, Cassatt found the perfect partner in McKim, Mead and White, who whose reputation for designing such iconic structures made them the ideal choice for the project. Their prominence in the architectural realm and their ability to craft recognizable landmarks undoubtedly played a substantial role in Cassatt's decision to commission them for the creation of Penn Station. The station, completed in 1910, was more than just an architectural spectacle. It was a glittering beacon of engineering innovation. In fact, the construction necessitated the creation of underwater tunnels beneath the Hudson River, a feat previously unachieved. Before Penn Station, passengers traveling from New Jersey to Manhattan had to complete their journey by ferry. However, the emergence of Penn Station revolutionized this commute, ushering passengers into a beautifully intricate, towering sanctuary, forever altering the city's transportation landscape. Delving into the architectural marvel that was the original Penn Station in New York, the immediate standout feature was the imposing facade along 7th Avenue, with its northerly and southerly entrances equipped to admit carriages and a central entrance designed for pedestrians. It was indeed a sight to behold. This centerpiece comprised 6 Doric columns, the most modest of the Greek orders, supporting a subdued entablature crowned with a distinctive medallion. The column spacing, interestingly, takes inspiration from Bernini's Piazza in Rome. The structure was fashioned in the Beaux-Arts style, a tribute to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, the epoch's most prominent and influential architectural institution. The Beaux-Arts style draws heavily from historical precedents, primarily the classical Greek and Roman aesthetics. In keeping with this tradition, the grand waiting room, towering above the rest of the station, was modeled after the baths of Caracalla from ancient Rome. As passengers navigated through the interior of the original Penn Station, they would observe 2 contrasting segments of this grand edifice. On the left, the waiting room with its impressive ceiling, and on the right, the train shed leading to the platforms. The waiting room immediately commanded attention with its vaulted, coffered ceiling, exquisitely carved out of stone, while a similar design, fashioned in steel, graces the train shed. However, the train shed swapped stone coffers for small panes of glass, serving as skylights, subtly illuminating the space. The similarity in the groin vaults seen in both sections makes a striking impression. Going deeper into the waiting room, arrivals could not help but notice the colossal entrances and exits bordering 7th and 8th Avenues. Furthermore, stairways leading to 33rd and 31st Streets were perfectly positioned at the ends, complemented by enormous clerestory windows that allow natural light to flood the hall. The coffered ceiling is fashioned out of travertine, meticulously quarried from Tivoli on the outskirts of Rome. Interestingly, this is the same stone that was used to construct Rome's famed Colosseum thousands of years prior. What set this room apart, however, was its astounding scale. We must truly marvel at the soaring heights of this enormous space, dwarfing its occupants. It was undoubtedly not just one of New York's finest public spaces, but also a globally significant architectural wonder of its time. Ascending from the train platform into the station, travelers first encountered the extraordinary skylit train shed. Its design drew inspiration from the renowned train sheds of Europe, yet the forms resonated strongly with the stonework of the central waiting room. What makes this structure particularly intriguing is the advanced engineering that went into its construction, a testament to the technological prowess of the era. The entire structure, including the columns, beams, and arches, were assembled from smaller sections, all painstakingly riveted together to create an intricately laced framework. Thus, Penn Station, completed 10 years into the 20th century, was not only an architectural masterpiece, but also an exemplar of the era's engineering sophistication. Now, intriguingly, the old Penn Station was not birthed from the generous hands of the government, state, or city. A private corporation, the proud proprietor of the land and edifice, was the mastermind behind this grand venture. This fact, though seemingly insignificant at the time, would later come to play a pivotal role in the station's tragic demise. You see, the downfall of the old New York Penn Station was a result of a broader narrative of decline that plagued the railroad industry, and specifically the financial predicaments of the Pennsylvania Railroad. This enormous station in the heart of Manhattan, amidst one of the nation's priciest real estate markets, proved increasingly burdensome for the company to maintain. By the twilight of its glory days, old New York Penn Station had shed much of its original grandeur due to a confluence of factors, among them the waning appeal of rail travel and the advent of alternative modes of transport, notably air travel. By then, the proliferation of automobiles and the dawn of the jet age had significantly reshaped people's traveling preferences, culminating in a dramatic decrease in demand for train services. Between 1945 and 1964, non-commuter rail passenger travel plummeted by a staggering 84%, as more Americans chose to journey by car or airplane. In a landmark shift in 1955, air travel in the United States surpassed train travel for the first time. By 1957, airliners had overtaken ocean liners as the favored means of traversing the Atlantic. This declining demand dealt a devastating blow to train stations, leading to their neglect and eventual demolition or repurposing. The desire for alternative revenue sources, such as leasing the air rights above the station or converting the land for other uses, also fueled the demolition of these grand structures. The dwindling interest in train travel was not only a product of the rise of air travel, but also stemmed from the expanding highway system in the United States. The creation of high-speed, four-lane corridors facilitated road travel, further undermining passenger rail travel. Additionally, the stringent sanctions and regulations imposed by the Interstate Commerce Commission or the ICC on the railroad industry significantly contributed to the waning fortunes of railroads. Consequently, the once awe-inspiring station progressively devolved into a grimy, deteriorating shadow of its former self. The exterior, once adorned with ornate pink granite, was now covered in filth, and the interior marred by the intrusion of advertisements and modern alterations, detracting significantly from its original grandeur. Noted architectural theorist and critic Lewis Mumford, in 1958, described the station as dingy, dark and cheerless, a mournful elegy to its fallen glory. Now, William Zeckendorf, a renowned real estate magnate, entered into a pivotal agreement with Pennsylvania Railroad President James Symes in 1955, laying claim to the air rights of Penn Station. Born in the modest town of Paris, Illinois, Zeckendorf relocated to the bustling metropolis of New York City at the tender age of 3. He forsook formal education at New York University to dive into the cutthroat world of real estate. A daring gambler at heart, Zeckendorf Sr. had a flair for gathering land parcels for monumental projects. Among his crowning achievements was the meticulous assembly of 75 parcels of land on the affluent east side of Manhattan, which would subsequently morph into the site of the United Nations. He had a hand in the development of iconic sites such as Century City in Los Angeles, Roosevelt Field Shopping Center on Long Island, along with various urban renewal endeavors in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. Furthermore, he collaborated with some of the most illustrious architects of the time, including the likes of I.M. Pei and Le Corbusier, for his grand projects. Zeckendorf Sr. had a reputation for being a visionary in the realm of real estate development. Unfazed by debt, he considered it a lever for his grand plans. He once famously quipped, "I'd rather be alive at 18% than dead at the prime rate." However, his penchant for risk-taking would ultimately be his downfall, leading to his bankruptcy in 1965 and the subsequent loss of his entire portfolio to creditors. Now, the lucrative mid-Manhattan station site was the prime allure for Zeckendorf's involvement in the Penn Station project. Initially, Zeckendorf conceived a plan to replace the station with a Palace of Progress, a merchandise mart of colossal proportions. However, in a strange turn of events, the Pennsylvania Railroad decided to cede its air rights for a new Madison Square Garden and an office tower. Thus, in 1961, the Pennsylvania Railroad executives made the fateful decision to dismantle the station and lease out its airspace to supplement their income. This triggered a public outcry, with droves of people protesting the decision in August 1962. The Action Group for Better Architecture was established to spearhead the efforts to salvage the Beaux-Arts structure, but their endeavors were to no avail. The demolition of Penn Station, a heart-rending spectacle, commenced on October 28, 1963, and lasted until 1968. Workers began tearing down the majestic limestone walls, stone eagles, and towering 30-foot-tall Doric columns. The demolition, a pivotal event that captured the media's attention, marked the bitter end of an era for this iconic edifice. In a bittersweet end to the tale, the demise of the old New York Penn Station proved to be the catalyst that ignited the modern historic preservation movement in the United States. The monumental loss spurred the establishment of the Landmarks Preservation Commission and effected a change in the city's development priorities, thereby saving other historic structures such as New York City's legendary Grand Central Terminal. The preservation movement that sprang from the ashes of Penn Station has since been instrumental in the protection of thousands of architecturally, historically, and culturally significant buildings and sites across the country.